Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the panel. We'll be discussing winning strategies in an OTT world, partnerships and value add. My name's Jonathan Nickell. I'm from a content consultancy company in the UK called 3Vision, and we basically exist to help solve people's content problems. So come and see me if you've got any of those. First of all, I'd like to set the scene with a few slides. We've seen recently, over the last couple of years, an absolute explosion in SVOD services. Many of them being launched by content owners, by channels, by platforms, and standalone operators. And the one thing all of these OTT services have in common is they all need content. Now, looking specifically at scripted series in the US, but just to give the general trend, the number of scripted series in production this year is more than double the number from 2010. So there's been a rapid increase in content production, and this is looking at sort of scripted series drama, but that's true across all genres. The other thing that is a very clear trend is the increase in budget for the content. Now, new series like Crown have a budget of $10 million per episode. This is a very clear change as we see money and talent both moving from film to TV. Now, all the major SVOD services are now content creators. Globally, you have sort of Hulu, Netflix, Amazon. Those guys are all creating content. In Asia, lots of services like Hook and Toggle. Stan in Australia, Claro in South America, they're all creating their own original content. For OTT, we see alliances for distribution is very key. It's important for the success of an OTT service to have good distribution alliances. An example of this is iFlix with Gig, but you can see it across all of these services. As they begin to get traction, it's because of the distribution alliances they form. And we're also seeing programming and partnerships and alliances, which, with the increasing cost of content and the increasing number of things being produced, there needs to be these alliances to help launch shows. And the alliances are happening at a very early stage, earlier and earlier. Now, why is this all happening? Well, it's because quality content and exclusive content brings people across to pay TV. It gives them a reason to come and watch. And that's essential for the success of these guys. Not all of these services are going to succeed, but the ones that do succeed are the ones that create content that people want to watch, that is good quality content. Now, in Asia specifically, being a digital-first market, it's difficult to measure some of the success of some of these shows. There are new companies popping up, and this is just a slide showing the sort of top shows in some of the territories in this region, according to Parrot Analytics. But I think this will be more and more critical to make sure the investment people are making in content is correct. So, let's move on to the questions for the panel. Panels are always better when the audience participates, so if you've got any questions, please put up your hand and we'll try and get to you as quickly as we can. But starting, and maybe you guys, as I ask the first question, when you answer, you could just introduce yourselves to the panel, let them know who you are. But Josh, over the last few years, there's been a big increase in OTT services. And I assume this is having an impact on your business and the way you're thinking. Maybe you could tell us a bit about the way you see your business changing due to this.
Yeah, so to quickly introduce myself, Josh Black, I work at a company called GroupM, which some of you in the room may know or may not know. GroupM is the media holding company for WPP, which is the world's largest advertising and media holding group. The operating companies under GroupM essentially do media buying and planning for a range of advertising clients like P&G, Unilever, Colgate, Mercedes-Benz, Ford, bunch of global clients. And essentially what they buy our service for is to either get media at a more efficient or more efficient price or a more effective outcome. My role within GroupM is essentially to guide the content business, which includes a range of business offers that work with advertisers and clients to get them into content. We have a content financing business and rights management company called GroupM Entertainment, and we then have a rights business called ESP Properties, which works with rights holders. And I thought your opening comment was interesting, where you said, you know, that the thing that all these OTT platforms have in common is they're looking for content. I think they've actually got a few other things in common, some fundamental business challenges, either in building audiences, financing that content, or essentially getting scale for their platform. And I think advertisers will play an important role in helping solve some of those challenges moving forward. How's OTT affecting our business? You know, not dramatically right now. There's not a huge amount of ad dollars in Asia, excluding China, going into digital platforms just at the moment. If you look at a market like Indonesia or the Philippines, Hong Kong or Singapore, the amount of ad dollars going to digital is sort of circa 15-20% right now. And that includes search, display, as well as pre-rolls and all the other stuff that the consumers get served up. So right now it's not, but I see that changing in the future.
Right, thanks Josh. Yuan, how about you? How do you see that, the increase in OTT impacting you guys?
And to briefly introduce myself, my name is Yuan Lee, and I'm the Chief Content Officer from IPCN, an Anglo-Chinese media company. We are the first in China who start a business of licensing international TV formats in this market. And as a content explorer, we have been pretty much initiated most of the first deals with international TV gurus in breaking into this market, from Fremantle to Endemol, from Taobao to NBC Universal. And to echo a bit to this topic today, actually we did the first original production / format licensing deal on China's major video platforms, ITE, in 2011. Back then, it's no much difference from a linear TV production, and we thought differently to pick this content based on the targeting audience in terms of online media users. But for now, in 2016, we launched 3 new content production, which had strong live streaming elements and also a very strong penetration on OTT. So the point I want to make here is we have to be ready as content producers, content production studios companies, and to embrace this furiously changing environment, because we seem to be knowing not enough about the users and what's their expectations in terms of how to consume this interaction and new content. As Josh just mentioned, in China, loads of money have been put into new media platforms. And actually, we all know they're still burning money. So together with them, we're trying to figure out a better way to come up with great content and to make a long, sustainable way of doing it with a better business model.
Right, thank you. Chee, do you have any comments on the topic?
Hi, my name is Chee. I'm the Chief Content Officer for MediaCorp in Singapore. We have radio, television. I don't know why I started with radio. We have television, radio, print. Of course, we have a digital platform, and we have on-the-ground events and also outdoor advertising business. Now, to quote Shane Smith from Vice Media, he said that there's never been a better time to be a content creator. No, actually, he said, this is the best time to be a content creator. And I do agree with that. We were just talking earlier, too. You know, right now, the thirst for formats and adapting formats is still there. It's just that people are really craving for original content. How do you differentiate yourself from all the other operators? You saw your slides, there are like hundreds of them, and there are more coming up. So the key differentiation is what is your unique content and how good it is. Now, in the larger scheme of things, in Singapore, at least MediaCorp is in a good position. As I just said, we have multiple platforms. We also do 1,600 hours of quality entertainment content a year. So when I take a look at OTT players coming on in the market, I do see them as an opportunity. I think it helps us. They are both our competitors and also our business partners because they do acquire content from us. And I think it's a good position to be as a content creator. It really drives us all to make better content because we just have to outdo everyone else.
So what do you see as the key for content creators to keep people engaged? Because I mean, there's a inherent problem with lots of SVOD platforms or OTT platforms, AVOD platforms, looking for unique content. They can't possibly all succeed. So how do you, I mean, I guess there's lots of questions here. How do you pick the right ones? And how do you create content that audiences want for these platforms?
Few aspects to this. I think number one is you just have to do a lot of them. You can't do one and say, I think this is going to be a hit. You can't put all your eggs in one basket and say, you know what, this is definitely going to be a hit. If I put the best of you guys here, all creative, and I say, I'll lock you in this room, you come up with the most commercial concept, the best original concept, and we think it's going to work, we test it, it comes out, it doesn't work. So quite importantly, besides the volume, it's very important to, as content creators, to be really true to yourself. And I give the example of Scandinavian television. For the longest time, they were big consumers of American formats. They had output deals with US studios, and they were doing pretty well. But when competition comes in, everybody else has the same content. At one point, they thought, hold on, we better make stuff that is true to ourselves. So Scandinavian noir start coming out. And now if you take a look at some of the television series, they're pretty strong. You know, The Killing, we're just talking about it again, they got formatted in the States, they have The Bridge. These are all stuff that are coming out from Scandinavia. In fact, Finland is the only country that has kind of recently that's reversed the trend of people watching free-to-air television versus online. So it's happening there, but it's very clear that that's where the good stuff are coming out from, at least from my point of view. And I think Hollywood is also taking note of that. Second one, obviously, is there is going to be a certain amount of investment in it. I think the quality of a concept is very important, but really, with some money, it doesn't hurt. But quality of a concept, being true to it, and being really creating the content that really makes your audience want to watch it is important. Thirdly, data-informed content creation. I think I'm a creative guy, but I love data, you know, because it really gives me an objective point of view. Because your red and my red is very different. Your good and my good is very different. But nowadays, with consumer insights, you know, the audience panels are so scientific and very smartly done. I think it allows us, they're like street lights to me. You know, it illuminates the path that you can take. But ultimately, we have to make the decisions. But at least now we know what the options are.
So do you get involved in those panels for shows you create? Do you go out yourselves to get feedback on how they're succeeding?
Well, we have you know, I love these guys. This team called Consumer Insights Analytics. We call them the CIA group. They are literally the CIA group because these guys are really good. Previously, from my experience, when they say focus group, oh, why didn't you call your friend? Oh, your friend. And then we come in the room, we give them coffee, and then we test the concept. Doesn't happen like that anymore. Very focused, very structured, very scientific. Comments and either they were prod, whether they were encouraged. All this comes in and we collate the data and we sit in. I encourage all my directors and writers to sit in and take a look at these. And then at the end, when you come back and you discuss it with networks, for example, and the sales team, of course, at least we have an objective data point base to start from. Yes, of course, I like this concept a bit more, but according to studies, these are also good. So at least then what is good is that it's not prescriptive. All these are suggested improvements. We can still go back and work on the concepts and fine-tune it before we get it to air. Right now, there are two main shows that came out on air. One is called OK Chope in Singapore. It's a live talk show with comedians. And it's about current affairs. It's all about how you turn headlines into punchlines. And for those of you who are based in Singapore, that probably is pretty edgy because you take pot shots at government policies, current affairs. So we got that out, and that was tested. We got the audience panels in, we did pilots, we retested it before we come up on air. I think that's going to be the trend.
Yuan, do you, how do you look at the stuff you're creating, and how do you make sure that it's what the audience actually want?
That is always a difficult question to answer. On top, I do agree, from data we can know a lot, because that's statistic, that's proven right, track record. But on top of that, I want to add a little bit about the mysterious things behind the creation itself. Because during the experience before, when we have huge fights, almost every successful deal, when we landed a format, we have the foreign production, the original producers, and the local productions. They have different perspectives in terms of how to make this right, how to make this story work. We have different background, different culture, but the core of the shows, no matter scripted or non-scripted content, it's the same. It's the entertaining story of it. It's about humanity. So the way to achieve it in the best state of the localization version of it, no matter which country it is, which platform it is, which targeting audience it is aimed to get into. It is sometimes, and is always, the best way to do it is to embrace the conflicts between different opinions. That is a very traditional way when you have a balance in feature film productions, you have producers and directors. And now we have these different perspectives in terms of international production and local production. We can really gain a lot of insights after that. So I really think for the productions we had before, that is a good lessons we learned.
Okay, great. And you mentioned the local and global production issue. I think that's an interesting one. I'd like to come on to that. Netflix are covering the world effectively. But in lots of markets, they've been seeing their impact's been pretty limited. The content offer's been quoted as being a problem. Pricing's been quoted as being a problem. How do you see their entry into Asia? Josh, maybe you want to pick that up.
Yeah, I think the challenge is finding a model that balances paid for content, so consumers putting their hand in their pocket and paying for content and sort of the quality of the content and then the amount of advertising. And obviously Netflix right now have got a purely no advertising sort of model. You look outside film and TV into, say, something like music, and Spotify have got a model that gives you a little bit of advertising with a lot of music, or you can pay to get rid of the ads, and it seems to work pretty well. And I think that's kind of the future. If I think it's a world where advertisers and great content sort of live together, and it's not going to be a pre-roll environment because consumers hate pre-roll, and I'm a consumer and I can't wait to sort of skip the ad after 5 seconds. But again, that's just an interruptive-based model that clearly didn't really work in TV, which is why people are going to digital platforms more frequently. in some parts. So there's a model to be kind of found that balances audiences with advertising, with great content. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think it will come.
Well, I think you're right. I think it needs to come, because if it doesn't, clearly the funding required to create the content isn't going to be sustainable.
Yeah, there's a lot of money to be had. You know, the global advertising number these days is up around $550 billion globally of advertising money sloshing around. Right now, about 25% of that goes to digital or web-based platforms, and that's growing at the fastest rate. You know, for every new dollar of advertising money that'll be spent next year, about 72 to 75% will go to digital platforms. So certainly the money's heading there, but again, it's highly fragmented.
So it's up to the services themselves to adopt the right business model to sustain the money coming to them, so they can create the content and pay for the content.
And that creates some challenges as well, because right now a lot of that money is going to Google and Facebook, and they don't create a lot of content, or any. So, you know, if people want great content, you have to either pay for it, or you have to sort of accept that there's a tax in the form of an ad that comes with it, and that's just the way it is. If you don't like the ads, then pay for the content.
Chee, do you think that's right? Do you think that some of these, or the OTT products that succeed are the ones that are going to adopt a sort of multi-tiered approach with a advertising level and a subscription level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, look, I don't have the answer right now. Now, what I do know is that when people watch services like Netflix, is that they just like it because it's uninterrupted. You know, I paid for this, and therefore I just want to watch it. Now, the key to some of this service succeeding, and you talk about that, and Yuan spoke about that in terms of local content, I think is key, especially for markets that are big enough to sustain it. For example, Netflix in Japan. You know, they really need to ramp up the production of local content. Now, the challenges in each of these markets are sometimes unique, sometimes very similar. In Japan, you have all talents locked into big companies. None of them are, there are a few freelancers, but the good ones are, you know, the big names are always locked in. So those are challenges. When you go to Indonesia, for example, then there are the challenges. So for services like iFlix or Netflix, they do need to acquire a base case. So they're buying quite a lot of bulk content, and we're beneficiary of that, so we thank them. But secondly, when they don't want to take it to the next level, when they want to entice people to pay $10 or maybe further on $12, look, they've already increased the price. So there's no mystery that eventually they need to do that. That's where they need to start ramping up the original content, because that's the only thing that's going to separate them. And the original content cannot be a rip-off or copy of the stuff of Stranger Things, for example, or Narcos, because that's just not going to work in some of these markets. So I do see that happening. And you know what? For those of you who are running content companies here, and even for your business, this is a great opportunity. It's a great time, because they are coming out looking hungry for original content. Yuan and I were just talking about earlier too. China, the service providers, all looking for good content, good concept. You just have to make sure that it's good, that is unique, and that it makes sense.
So, sorry, Josh.
No, just, great points. I mean, there's some other unique challenges about Asia as well. You go to somewhere like China, and you have very easy online payment platforms, Alipay and WeChat Pay and stuff, where you can pay for this content. You go somewhere like India, and you know, less than 2% of consumers own a credit card. So how do you get them to pay? And then you go to somewhere like the Philippines, and it's not just the $9.99 a month you've got to pay for Netflix. You've got to pay for the bandwidth and the data use as well. You know, and people like the Ayala family and, you know, Manny Pangilinan have got not a lot of vested interest in making data cheaper. So it's not just the $9.99 a month you have to pay for this stuff. It's also the fact that you've got to pay some fairly significant data charges. And then you add in, you know, the fact that Hulu's probably going to come to Asia, Amazon's launching in Asia, YouTube Red's launched in most markets, you know, Do consumers want to have 7 subscriptions to 7 different platforms? Maybe in Japan and Australia, yes, and Singapore and Hong Kong, but no, not in Indonesia or Thailand or the Philippines.
I think what is important to note too is that these guys are not taking these changes sitting down, right? So Netflix just announced that with the app, newly improved app, you can download, while you're at home or anywhere with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you can take it with you.
You can take it with you. So they realize this, they notice it, and they're doing it. Because in Japan, for example, you're right. My friends will subscribe to Hulu because they were bought by Nippon Television. So they subscribe to that because they got a lot of Japanese content. They subscribe to Amazon because they download it first. And then on the train and the commute, they do that. And then for the other more premium product, they go to Netflix. So, but these guys are not sitting down. They are coming up with improvements every few months for updates. And this is the latest from Netflix.
And so, but do you see that development that disrupts the existing business models that are there? So I know the view of the Hollywood studios was we really don't want to grant download rights because if we do, our electronic sell-through disappears. Why would you buy something if you can subscribe to a service and download it and take it away with you? And so, I mean, it's coming, and as we can see, I mean, Amazon did it very early, and they paid through the teeth to do it. Netflix are doing it now. It needs to be something, especially in markets where the data is expensive, you need to be able to do that so you can take it away and have the convenience. But as a content creator, you've got to charge for that. You've got to build that in somehow.
Well, the studios are still making a lot of business, just maybe different departments because they're still
they're shifting the revenue around.
They're shifting it to the next team. So look, at MediaCorp, we have the same initiative. The next thing we're gonna do is what we call Toggle It First in our digital platform. Now we're gonna have series where we're just gonna premiere it on Toggle, premiere on the digital platform. Now, then the question is, how will your advertisers take to that?
Yeah.
So these are the questions that we have to answer. But look, it's all happening there. So we're going to have a few test cases, and that's going to happen because, like you say, it's so convenient for me to just take an app and I'm just watching live TV, and it's really sexy to me as a consumer that, wow, this is not on TV, but it's on Toggle first for the next 3 months or something before I can watch it on free-to-air. But look, we have to accept the fact that there are different consumption habits. Right, the younger ones, not so young. Actually, I'm not that young, but I just watch everything online. We've known of our customers who are like 60, 70-year-old grandparents, and the grandkids teach them how to use the Toggle app, and they just have to expand it. And now they're watching catch-up TV from like titles to 25 years ago. So in terms of consumption habits, it's changing so much, and we just have to, accept it and take it that, look, if you don't make it available on online platform, which we are going to, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot, right? So
Yuan, how do you balance the old clients you have, and you probably still do, for linear TV, with the hunger for content from the new OTT guys? Because I guess you need to support both, and there needs to be a fair way of supporting both. How do you see that?
Yes, before answering that, I want to add a little bit because not just apart from the applications, we're also co-developing content now with devices, even smart TV in China, and even bandwidth carriers. Just like George said, when you're paying something, you can buy content together with them. So that's another way of we are seeing that those devices owners, those service owners, become owners of content as well. So coming back to the questions you said, yes, we have to support both that. First, it is different, very much different, but also it is the same core. It's all about stories. But the way to doing that is to keep up to speed and also just react to the new changes. For example, the shows we just done is with strong elements of live streaming. Actually, we did it as a traditional talent show on linear TV. But the difference is we have to change the model, change the structure every day. So that's not something we normally did before when we're doing a linear TV. Although we are getting reactions, feedbacks from the audience, but the data or the feedbacks are not this severe compared to online viewers, online paid users. They are so serious about your content, so they can feedback to you and get back to the production. So just like I said before, we have to be ready and embrace these changes so that we can always keep up to the quality and the requirement that the audience expect. Yes.
Okay, and from a linear perspective, how important are your linear customers to you? What's the split, would you say, between the creation of your content, selling it to linear first or selling it to OTT first?
Actually, there are some certain genre of content that is always suitable for linear or specifically targeted, created for OTT. But in general, for us, we are kind of serving and providing content to both of them, and it's kind of the same time. And for now, the major part is still from the linear TV. It is because the business models are more fairly mature. And for OTT, we still need to find ways to get the money, to get the business model, to get advertisers involved. And that is a question to be answered. So we're still open to that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just want to open it up to the audience now. We're coming close to the end. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask in the audience of the members of the panel?
Not me. I'm not taking questions.
Hello there. Dean Carroll from Umbrella. I just wanted to broach the elephant in the room here, and that's piracy. And I just wanted to ask all of the panel really what their view was on how much of a threat piracy is and whether it is actually possible to eliminate it, or is the best we can hope for just to reduce it?
Who'd like to take that first? Josh?
Oh, look, piracy is obviously a massive issue for everyone, whether you're a content creator, a platform owner. I think the only person that benefits out of piracy, frankly, is the pirate. And frankly, in some cases, yes, the consumer, although I don't think there's a long-term benefit to the consumer, because if everyone's pirating content, then who kind of pays for it, right? And who produces it? And it won't be the pirate. It does have some implications, certainly, as a business that advises clients on where to spend their money. We actively work against piracy. We actively try and restrict client money from going to pirated sites, both from an ethical point of view, but also just from an effectiveness point of view. There's a lot of malware and bots associated with these sites that frankly just waste client money. So we have a fairly active approach and stance against piracy at WPP, and I think it's an issue.
I think also the services making content available to customers easily in a guaranteed quality way, that has to be part of the equation as well.
I agree, because quite some time back I was working with MTV, and in that industry they struggle with piracy really hard. When I spoke to some of the senior people, at a certain point I felt a certain inertia that they were not willing to stream it online. And that's what happened. Then very quickly they came out, and then iTunes came out, and look, it's so easy for you to get the content for a very affordable amount of money. Now, whether you can eradicate piracy altogether, I don't think so, but it does cut it down tremendously. Now, a personal story is that when I used to make feature films, I remember one of my first feature film went to a film festival, and I was really happy. After the screening, we came out and we were walking the night market, and one of the guys said, "Hey, Chee, look at your film is already there." It was amazing, and it was so. I bought a few copies. We took it back, and we thought it was fun. But it's not. That I thought, wow, more people are seeing my stuff, but it's not, because you know why? That stops the company that invested in me from giving me more money to make more films. So in the cycle of things, now that I've grown up and wisened up, I think it's very important that we see it in the larger scheme of things, that if we want good content, you know, the companies that put money in there to invest in it and to pay people for it, I think it's important that we take a look at this. But you're right, to make it easily available, you know, to make it less hassle-free and good content, I think that will discourage people from actually going to check out pirate sites.
Great, thank you. I'm afraid we've run out of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you put your hands together for the panel?
Thank you.